This is Power 102 Digital Wednesday afternoon. Our talk is hosted by Farid Ali. He has some very special guests. And the topic for today, like I said, Tobago October Carnival. Good afternoon, Farid, and how are you, my brother?
Good afternoon, David. It's good to hear your voice. Um, how are you enjoying the week so far? I have a little pump and pep in my step because um, I kind of enjoy what happened yesterday. When the minister experienced a taste of what crime is and how
Yeah,
it is feel,
yeah.
for a gun to be stuck in your face, that adrenaline rush and you pee your pants feeling. Uh, when ministers of government feel that, they just understand what the people feeling.
That's right.
You don't.
Surprising to hear him say that. Look where it reached.
So my thing is that I expect that um, he would think that he was free from any interference or free from any aftershock of the criminality that is on the street.
Yes.
Well, I can't say that I'm happy that it happened to him, but I'm happy that he experienced what the rest of us experience, and he
Thank you.
experienced the adrenaline rush. But
Yeah.
I'm looking at it from a different angle. If it is you're a politician and you get robbed in your own constituency, that says
Mm.
something about the kind of leadership that the constituency, how the constituents feel about the constituency and its leadership.
I tell you. What is also amazing, well, it's not really amazing because I've experienced it happening already, is the quick fire operations and investigations of the police. They have already had two
That
sets.
didn't surprise me. That didn't
No,
surprise me.
no, that isn't
Somebody had
surprising.
to get locked up,
Yeah, yeah,
Somebody had to get locked up. This can't go unsolved. He
yeah.
wasn't taking that. If it
No,
is that they call out the 8,000 police and everybody who on holiday to solve this one, they had to
yes,
call them out. Them
yes,
police know somebody had to get locked up. Some little boy in some little back alley some way had to get locked up and blamed for this. Even if it is, it is a far-fetched case against him and only circumstantial evidence, there are nothing concrete. It's kind of like
mhm,
if a woman ball rape and they lock up the nearest man.
yes.
But I ain't gonna lie, since yesterday I'm saying, anytime they hold somebody, I will represent them for free.
Hmm.
I don't understand that at all. So he figured he could come out on the road
Yes,
and drink a beer in front of Bingi Bar opposite the Catholic Church
yeah.
in St. Joseph, and he free from any interference.
Hmm.
But he's the same man who said that don't blame him for the woes in the health sector, that his input stops at the door of the hospital, right?
It really
And then
stops
and then
right there.
don't blame him for crime. That how he go form policies to stop crime. That his work is to resource the police and to
Mhm.
look after the needs and provide resources and provide support.
Yeah.
So he can't blame Heinz. And
makes
when
us feel
Rowley
as though makes us feel as though we're living in La La Land.
no, and Rowley say, well, he not responsible for crime. So I would imagine Terrence knows to leave Rowley alone. That is not his business.
Eh?
But that's the most amusing thing, boy. I
Yes.
I can't help it. I say, but the chickens coming home to roost. But you see how glazy eyes look in the video? The man eyes get glazy and he
Yeah,
talking, but you could tell the panic in the voice, like when
of course.
I know Pima Pants feeling. Uh, and he's trying to explain. But who he calling? I would pay good money to find out who he was talking to.
Yeah, me too. Me
Who
too.
he was talking to.
Yes.
And then he telling them how the police already involved.
Yeah. Well, on the chat that I am on a busy chat. It has a lot of people on it, and they were saying that if you want to protect yourself from any kind of injuries or probably death, just wear a bracelet.
Yeah, yeah.
They will take your bracelet and they'll leave you alone.
Well, I would imagine that the 3,940 people who died during the COVID
Hmm.
period,
Yeah.
that you know, that doesn't fall on his doorstep. I would like to know what falls on whose doorstep in relation to this robbery.
Ay, ay, ay. Man, I don't know. I don't know.
No, but
Trinidad, sweet Trinidad.
the thing about the criminality is they want us to the Erla is saying that serious crime is down 16%.
I don't understand that language, I don't think that's a Trinidadian language.
No, well, let me put it this way, David. Let me explain it in a way that I think it makes sense of what she's saying. In other words, it's parallel reasoning, right? If you get horn in the month of July, if a man horn his wife in July month, and the wife confront him and he horn in December, if she responds, but I want you quiet in July, you still talking about that? So the enough time, if it's once and if sufficient time has passed, well then it's not what it is. Right? It ain't so serious and it's not so impactful and you could let it slide. So
I mean,
so here reasoning that serious crime is down. She's doing comparator. She's saying that in the month of July last year to where we are now, it went down.
Yeah.
The public can't be appeased by that. The public can't feel any sort of solace in that. When it is your two children leave home and your grandchildren leave home and your wife leave home, you're still panicking where you are. You can't tell yourself, well, crime down this year. So in other words, what she tell you is the odds are in your favor. Because it's down this year, there was last year this time, it was more likely that something would have happened to you than now.
I don't understand the language they speak, like I said, because it's the same thing with Tehran Dial Singh. It probably has to come home for you to understand what is going on out here.
But like they have no respect for the minister in your own constituency. If he'd go and get robbed somewhere else, I can understand. Well, they know me yet. Yeah. But he lineman by Naya Bingi Bar.
Yeah.
Telling himself he could sit down and a stool out. But anyways, this season to lineman, it's one more year to go and he looking for his vote. I'm sure he wasn't lineman by Naya Bingi Bar 3 years ago because 3 years ago he didn't need no vote.
That's right. Exactly. That's the time you see them.
I wonder if he went accident and emergency for them to check, just give him a general checkup to check his blood pressure to make sure down to where.
They people of that ilk don't visit the local health institutions. They travel out. So
man, he can't use taxpayers' dollars to go quite bath in England to check his blood pressure.
He might go as far as
if he drink a beer, it might have come back down to where it's supposed to be, and then one lady next constituent walking home. I'm sorry for my all I can't. I really can't.
No. Well, the first time I saw it, I said, well, at least they get a taste of what is happening on the ground, and they will understand the kind of situation people are finding themselves in. Just like that, there are lots of people who don't even want to go out of the house now, and they're coming into your house now. So we're in a total mess where crime prevention is concerned.
Well,
I like the commissioner also said, I pray. I pray a lot and ask the Holy Father to keep me covered and safe.
Yeah, like Heinz here praying and Terrence here praying.
I tell you.
What bothers me is you see, it's the calculated indifference they have towards the population. The general citizens who walk in the ground, there's a lack of empathy coming from the politicians. Their language isn't a language of, listen, we in charge, we leading, and ultimately the buck stops with the leader.
That's right.
The leader saying, I went and I had a ditty. They had this little song that we love you so, we love you TNT, and we care. But your behavior is not that you care. Your behavior is supposed to be, listen, I really want to reach all the way where you all are. Your pain is my pain. Your breath here is my breath here. And whatever you're going through, I going through. You don't come and say, you have to, what the Prime Minister is say, you have to skills up.
Yeah.
You have to skills up. So I guess Tehran should skills up. He should get a better job. He should get a job where he don't have to come outside at all.
Yeah, the Prime Minister said his job is to make sure that there's a police service, and that's the end of his concerns about where crime is concerned. The police will handle that. Full stop.
What I'm scared about is whoever is arrested, I hope they get proper treatment.
Hmm.
On another note is, according to the Legal Aid Act, there was an amendment that allowed for persons to have free representation who was arrested under suspicion of having committed a murderous act.
Yeah.
One, and secondly, if you're a minor and you're arrested. So somebody who robbed the minister, they're not entitled to legal aid assistance. So they had to toss it alone until they get a private attorney.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I hope Hando pass and alleged confessions come true.
Hmm.
They ain't get proper representation. There's a good time to exercise your right to silence until you get legal assistance.
That's right. That's right. So true. But
I
it
hope they
doesn't.
get the respect they deserve in the station.
Hmm.
Not because it's a minister. That's how they will take them down a certain path.
Yeah.
I hope it are no chairs in that station, Because if they fall off a chair in that station, about the next one about they fall off a chair.
Yeah, that's it. I tell you, the quick fire.
Anytime I get locked up, I tell them wherever station they taken me, call them in advance and tell them remove all the chairs, please.
I tell you, this is Trinidad. This is.
I hope that they amend the law to allow for persons who are arrested. And I'm being serious here, not that I'm not being serious all the time, but I find it's high time that anybody who's arrested, they should be able to access legal aid assistance by way of a duty counsel. They call them duty counsels, where when you're arrested, you have a lawyer who comes in to advise you as to what you should and shouldn't say, and how to conduct yourself, and what to expect in the interrogation process.
Right.
Because a lot of persons, when they're arrested, they figure, well, when I get to the station, they start to question me about this particular act, that my right in terms of me exercising my right to silence only begins at the station. It begins when it is there, put the handcuff. When them task force men lock you up and they talking nice to you and say, boy, what God, me, boy, we just can't in the station. Them fellas just be playing mind games with you, they're making conversation and trying to get out of you whatever happened, what version of the facts, and they're making a note of that in the diary in the station and using that against you too. So your right to silence is from the time your eye meet the police eye and you see that jeep and that siren, you're supposed to go silent. No police you don't trust in this situation because all of them about the same agenda. Crime solving.
I tell you.
I just want the same energy going to when you and I get robbed or people on the street. That is what is bothering me.
I tell you, because I always look at that. I remember one time a woman was kidnapped, and within a day they found the woman. I remember a minister's son losing his cell phone, and within no time they got the cell phone. So this isn't surprising to see the kind of quick fire operations that they put into this Terrence D. Helsing issue. But this is Trinidad.
Okay, so for the listening public today, we've sent out a special invitation to our brothers and sisters in Tobago. I've invited no other than Ms. Tasha Burris. She serves in the capacity within the THA in that area of, if I may put it this way, culture and tourism and so on. We've had information that the carnival is well in there in terms of the October carnival. So the Secretary of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation of the DHA is joining us this afternoon with Dr. Charleston Thomas. And we're just having a general discussion about the Oktoberfest, as some of us may colloquially refer to it, or the October Carnival, and to find out what are some of the expectations we should carry and harbor in relation to the festival. Dr. Thomas, I see you're there with us. I know that we are Ms. Burris should be with us shortly. So
Yes.
I'm happy to see you there. If you can turn on your camera so you can share your
I'm sorry. Good afternoon. I'm not in a position to show my camera, so my apologies.
Okay.
And the secretary was with us. We were both logged in from 4:15, but she had to jump out. And she's now messaging me. Yes, right. So she will jump in shortly. Because we were here since 4:15. Yes.
So my apologies in a little way. We had started with a small interlude because we couldn't resist the to comment on certain things that are happening in the public space. But we here with you until 6 o'clock. So tell us something. Tell us about your portfolio as technical advisor to the THA. What sort of role do you play in the THA as technical advisor? In what particular area?
Right. Right. So good afternoon to everybody again. Am I to assume that we have a wide listening audience?
Of course we do.
Lovely.
We
So
live on YouTube and Facebook as well as radio.
nice. Good. So before I talk about my portfolio, I would begin by making some corrections to the introduction you gave about the secretary. Right? She is, yes, the secretary for in the division tourism. The name of the division is tourism, culture, antiquities, and transportation. Right? But her portfolio is more than and beyond culture. Right? I think it's important for the listening public to be keenly aware of the unique organization or entity that is the THA. All right. And if this is a national listening, listening facility, then I would want to make sure that the listening public understands how the THA in particular functions. So the secretary is a secretary to that division, and her portfolio is beyond culture. All right. And my portfolio as the technical advisor in the division, I'm one of two technical advisors, and I'm technical advisor for culture and antiquities. In the division, you have 4 elements, which are tourism, culture, antiquities, and transportation. And my portfolio is for culture and antiquities. The other technical advisor's portfolio is for transportation, tourism, and transportation. And the secretary is the secretary for all of that. All right. I have to also say that while I'm very happy to be here, I think the word respect didn't escape me. And since you were here from 4:15, I think it would have been nice to say good evening to our fellows from Tobago at 4:15 once it went live, so that your conversation with your colleague about government and politicians respecting people is also well represented on your platform.
I appreciate that. So my
Right.
apologies in that regard.
We get that. So I, under the responsibilities of culture and antiquities, all right, I have the particular responsibility for working towards developing the antiquities program, all right, or the antiquities unit. I also give technical advice to the Department of Culture by way of engaging with the secretary and the administrator. Are you aware of, do you know anything about the THA, Farid? Can you, like, from your very popular place as a spokesperson, would you be able to tell the public anything as robust as you may be able to about the central government system? Would you be able to say the same thing about the THA, or would you need somebody to help you?
No, I would need your assistance in that regard. What I have is what I've read in the public space and what I've discerned from reading the Act, the THA Act.
Right, nice. So that there is one of the biggest challenges, I would immediately say, about how the narrative about Tobago and Tobago Carnival is engaged in the media, with a particular absence of fine understanding about our national systems, which include both central government and the systems in Tobago. All right. So the absence of a proper understanding of that actually distorts the information or engages information with a lot of assumptions, right? But not necessarily with the kind of understanding that is required, simply because a fine understanding of our national systems does not happen. And I should say that I don't quite find that the media in general does necessarily a very good job in advancing or helping, aiding in that facility that is, I mean, solely required. All right. So what I do as the technical advisor is really provide the kind of subject matter expert, I suppose, or specialist advice to the secretary and to the administrator. The administrator is your equivalent or equivalent to the permanent secretary in the ministry. All right. And based on that, decisions are taken and you have actions happening. The secretary has joined us, so I could give way to the secretary to say something as well.
Good afternoon, Ms. Burris. It's lovely to have you here this afternoon. We appreciate your time and your effort. I know I reached out to you somewhat late, but you were so willing and so articulate in terms of the pre-discussion we had. So we appreciate that the time you've taken to be with us this afternoon. If it is you wish to turn on your camera so you can share yourself with us. We're live on YouTube and Facebook. I have no issue with seeing. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the program. Welcome to Hard Talk. We just want to thank you for extending yourself and also to Dr. Thomas also for making him available to us. So hopefully we'll have a meaningful discussion in terms of an enlightening discussion, that is, in terms of clearing certain things up in the public space. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ali, and thank you for the invitation to Power 102 FM. This is the first time that I have been on this radio program called Hard Talk, and I hope that the focus this afternoon will definitely enlighten your viewers and enlighten the wider population of Trinidad and Tobago as to what is taking place in Tobago, the perspective of the Tobago House of Assembly, and what is happening with respect to the Tobago October Carnival. So thank you again.
I'm sorry for the late start. I couldn't help myself, so I engaged in some small talk with our producer, who you wouldn't see, but you will hear from. So,
Okay.
but we have enough time. We're here till 6 o'clock. Tell us something, Ms. Burris. How has your time in the THA in this current executive been in the past few years? I know that we are approaching 2025, so we are looking at an election sometime within the next year. How have you enjoyed your time serving in the THA? Do you have any, I'm sure there are high points and not so much high points, but it has to have been an enjoyable experience as well as challenging, given the sort of coverage that we see carried in mainstream media and social media.
Well, I can tell you that having entered politics somewhere around November 2019, definitely I did not see myself sitting in this chair. If you asked me in 2020 after I ran for the general election, if you told me that I would be Secretary of Tourism, I would say, nah, God didn't have that in store for me. Because my plan was to run this very amazing campaign alongside Mr. Duke and hopefully get into Parliament and be in a position to articulate on behalf of the people of Tobago the issues that are affecting the people of Tobago and where we see ourselves as part of this relationship between Tobago and Trinidad. However, obviously, the Lord had his own plans. For me, the last 2 years and 9 months has been definitely a very interesting learning experience. I've had to grow a very thick skin. Politics certainly is not for the faint of heart. I always believe that I lead with my faith in front, and that is the thing that has kept me. I have a very strong support system. Dr. Thomas and my other technical advisor, Ms. Coris Nancis, have provided a lot of support from me from the technical end in terms of being able to navigate the division coming out of COVID and navigate the industries coming out of COVID. I also have in the form of my current administrator, Mr. Julian Skeet, someone who has been committed to getting down in the trenches and getting the work done in terms of setting us on a path of success. And I must take the opportunity to also thank my previous administrators, Ms. Sherry-Ann Edwards-Louis, Miss Liselle Hamilton Edwards, who was there with us briefly, and even Miss Wendy Guy Hernandez, who I met in the very beginning, who I only had for 10 days. These are the women who really provided a lot of support for me sitting in the chair. Definitely, I can say that in the last 2 years and 9 months, Tobago has seen tremendous progress under this administration, and that has not come easy. Every step that we take towards achieving the goals that we have set out, because we had a very ambitious mandate coming into government, and we are busy checking off those boxes. For us, it's always about focusing on what more can we do. Definitely, we have faced a lot of challenges in our relationship with central government, and that is no secret. All of the things that have happened in the last 2 years, Audio Gate, the challenges with Secretary James right now, the warrants, searching of houses. These are things that we are subject to as public officials at this time in Tobago. The level of persecution, that's the word that I would use, that we are facing, and simply wanting to achieve the mandate that we set out to achieve when we got into office. But definitely for me, I feel the love and the support of the Tobagonians who really see us trying our best despite all the challenges that we have before us. And even despite all that we have experienced, for me, I think that we have a group of persons who remain committed to ensuring that Tobago achieves its highest potential. We talk about becoming the greatest little island on the planet. And that is something that we live, eat, breathe, and sleep every single day. Actually, I just came out of our executive council, a very long day of our deliberations and our decision making with respect to Tobago. And we constantly strategize as to how much more we can do and what else is there to be done. And we dream very big. We dream bold dreams. And for us being in the administration at this time, the focus is always about how do we get the most benefit for the most people who live on the island of Tobago at this time.
Well, I think I appreciate all that you've described. I would imagine once you hold public office, you can't please everyone. It will be always a struggle to please everyone everywhere, and you can't please all the people all the time. But you all have been doing a good job so far. I mean, I don't think there are any complaints generally about the nature of the work that you all have been doing as an executive. I'm sure that Curtis Douglas and his association may have a different view, but like everything else, I think you all gave an ample explanation as to the money that was allocated after the oil spill and where the money had to go. And at first I thought that it was a bit heartless when I read, like lay persons like myself, when I read that some of the fishermen didn't get the compensation that they wanted. But then Mr. Augustine cleared up that, you have to, apart from invoicing the THA, they need to investigate.
To qualify the expenditure, because for us, and especially since that we are under a higher level of scrutiny than previous administrations before us. So definitely we don't want a situation where we run to pay out money and then we realize on the back end, if we didn't do our proper checks and balances, that fraudulent claims slipped through, and we now have to account for monies that were paid out in error. Nobody wants to be able to have to stand and defend that. So I think that erring on the side of caution and ensuring that we measure once, twice, 3, 4 times and cut once, I think that is a very responsible approach, especially when you don't have all of the resources to be able to treat with all of the challenges all at the same time. We have to definitely ensure that the people that we are paying, that they are the ones who have been the most seriously affected, and we can verify the claims when they come.
I appreciate Steve. What I wanted to chat about in some small way before we move on to the larger pieces of the pie is the upcoming October Carnival. Maybe you can tell us something about what we can expect or visitors could expect, both locally, I mean, let's say Trinidad and perhaps the wider region, and perhaps those persons abroad in the US and Europe who come in. What are the special features of this October Carnival that you all will be introducing that we may not have had in the 2 versions before this year?
Well, the beautiful thing about being the newest carnival on the block is that we always have the opportunity to look back on what everyone else has done for the year and see how we can constantly improve and evolve our product. For us, based on user feedback for the first 2 years, one of the features that people definitely have enjoyed is the very picturesque route that exists because we centralized the carnival last year. So when you come and play mass on the road in Tobago, you're moving from almost a forest-like setup to a waterfront where there is blue skies and blue sea and everything that jumping up and reveling in paradise would give you. One of the things that our masqueraders have said to us year 1 and year 2 is that one of the features of Carnival that they particularly enjoy is jumping up on a stage. And I'm happy to say that we did listen to them. And this year we are trying to build out a stage type experience for the masqueraders. I don't want to give away too much just yet, but we are hoping that once all our plans come into play, that our masqueraders will have this added feature for this year, where there's an actual stage component for them to cross, so that it mimics that feeling that they get when they cross the Savannah stage in Trinidad. It's just that this time they're doing it in Tobago. In addition to that, for me, and if I have to sell the Carnival on all of the things that are positive, is that Tobago Carnival is one of the safest carnivals that you can attend. And we already have the commitment from ACP Hazel, who is currently in Tobago and leading our security meetings and ensuring that all of the arms of national security and other agencies are doing what they have to do and pulling the resources to be able to ensure that once again we can boast about having an extremely safe carnival. Last year there were only 2 reported incidents, and those incidents were mostly of drunkenness and not necessarily of any fights or any accidents or any incidents or any serious incidents like that. So, you know, with thousands of people descending upon the capital within a 3-day span, to be able to boast that we had no serious incidents, I think that that is something that is very worthy. And especially given that it was only our 2nd year hosting this carnival, I think that is something that we really have to give some kudos to the TTPS and the TTDF and all of the other arms of national security who came to the fore to ensure that we could have a safe carnival. Added to that, we have always sold the elements of coming to enjoy Destination Tobago. And there are a number of fetes and activities that are happening in the lead up to the carnival for the entire month of October. And there are activities for every possible age group. We have a kids soca city. We have the regular all-inclusive fetes that you would find. We have boat rides. We have raft up. We have bus tour. We have tours around the island. We have a number of groups coming into the island to enjoy all of the activities in the lead up. We have Blue Food, the Blue Food Festival in its 27th year, resident in the middle of the carnival as well. So that even if you're not in Tobago on the weekend of the 25th to the 27th, once you're landing in Tobago during the month of October, there is something for you to enjoy. And we want to make sure that we have a wide cross-section of activities for every type of person, no matter where you come from, to enjoy in Tobago and to enjoy safely. Our major challenge has always been getting to the island, and that still remains, but it is our hope that by next year's incarnation, that problem would be solved. But generally, there are some very exciting elements that will be featured this year. We are welcoming Marshall Montano to Tobago for the first time for Tobago October Carnival on the Sunday night, which is like our climax night. So he will be there putting on a concert at a party at Comfort Suites. And we feel like if having Marshall to close off our carnival essentially is a feather in our cap, and definitely we are excited to welcome him and all other soca artists who will be descending on Tobago during that time.
You know, I like voices, so I hope voice is there. You know, allow me to be the devil's advocate. I have you here, and I want to quote from the newspaper, so I don't want this to feel personal at all. I need a comment from you in this regard, so it's merely said for you to comment on. Okay. I'm taking this from the Thursday, the 12th of September 2024, the Trinidad, the Newsday. It's an article which reflects, and I'm quoting Martin George, criminals laughing at TTPS efforts in Tobago. I'm just reading a small excerpt. It starts, in a stinging assessment of the crime situation in Tobago, Chairman of Tobago Chamber of Commerce Martin George says that while criminals are running rampant, the police seem clueless and helpless. He warned that the island could be lost if action isn't taken soon. He goes on to say, one does not feel any sense of comfort, safety, or security. The criminals appear to be running rampant, creating murder, mayhem, and madness, while the police seem clueless and helpless. Police seem focused on the wrong things. It's no surprise the criminals are having a heyday. They are laughing at us and at the nation. I'm going down a bit. I'm quoting another Tobago son. Progressive Democratic Patriot leader Watson Duke called on Chief Secretary Farley Augustine to establish the Homeland Security Department he recommended months ago and even offered to help set it up for free. However, he warned that if Augustine has no plans to tackle the crime situation, he should just call an election. I am in no way endorsing what is said there, right? My position is this, and I'm asking you. So much is being said about the rise in criminality levels in Trinidad as well as Tobago. Tobago is just a division, one of 11 divisions. What sort of discussions have you all been having with the TTPS? You mentioned Senior Police Officer Hazel, in terms of putting things in place, extra measures in place to ensure that the fears that persons like Mr. Duke and Mr. Martin George have, that sort of publicity and that sort of narrative, it may not be coming from their voices alone. There are people on the ground who may feel that it's an unsafe space to be in. What have you all been putting in place, or have you all embarked on discussions to have extra security measures in place to ensure that the persons who visit need not carry any fear that something could happen?
So this is not something new. From the very first year that we had the carnival, we engaged the TTPS and we would get extra strength during that time, because very much unlike the February arrangement, where all of the resources of the TTPS are concentrated in Port of Spain and environs to ensure that the carnival in the capital in Port of Spain is safe. In October, there is no major event happening in Trinidad competing for those said resources. So since year one, we took a decision to support the TTPS by way of resources, and those resources included paying for the accommodation of officers from Trinidad to be in Tobago for the days prior to the festival and up to the end of the festival, paying for things like meals, paying for things like extra resources, mattresses, and all different kinds of things for times when officers cannot get accommodation in hotels, but they can get accommodation at the station. And this administration is on record as having supported the efforts of the TTPS, the TTDF, the TTCG in Tobago. And if you understand the Tobago House of Assembly Act, you will have an appreciation that we do not have responsibility for national security matters. And as I said to you, the Tobago House of Assembly does not pay the police, we don't pay the army, we don't pay the fire services, we don't pay the Coast Guard. And the national security budget is not just the budget for the operations of national security apparatus in Trinidad. It is also the budget for the operations of national security apparatus in Tobago. However, they have not been getting the kind of resources that would allow them to be able to do more or do what they need to do to ensure that Tobago remains safe. So if we're talking about a carnival is a one-off event. We get the strength from Trinidad. The place is safe. People feel safe. There are patrols. There are roadblocks at all of the events. You have a show of force. So this is a conversation bigger than just the carnival. When you talk about general national security challenges that we have on the island, my chief secretary is on record stating that this administration has taken our resources that we have allocated for other areas, and we have put those areas on the back burner to be able to support the efforts of national security. So we have effected repairs to the prison. We have effected repairs to the Coast Guard base. We have rented vehicles for the TTPS, the TTDF, and the Coast Guard. We have housed their officers. We have procured vessels for the Coast Guard. And those efforts are not necessarily the responsibility of the THA. But as any responsible administration, we cannot just throw our hands in the air and say, just because central government is not paying any attention to what is happening, it means that we are not throwing water on our roof. If your neighbor house on fire, wet yours. And I think that is the most apt saying that I can use at this time. And Tobago is in the process of wetting their house. And we will continue as any responsible government to choose to prioritize the safety of our citizens. And that is why it is easy for us to take the decision to put things on the back burner to be able to send much needed resources to these agencies. And definitely the door is always open for further collaboration and conversation. The Chief Secretary, I believe, has conversations with the Minister of National Security on these matters on a regular basis. But definitely, if there is any real interest in heading off what may be a situation, because we might be seeing ourselves going down a particular road, then we definitely need to understand that the central government has to prioritize safety and security in Tobago and give the Tobago House of Assembly the necessary resources. This is also a conversation about the autonomy bill and what that means for Tobago. The Tobago House of Assembly currently doesn't have lawmaking powers. So even if there's a situation in our domestic space that requires particular kinds of action, we have to wait on a central government to act. So let's just say we recognize that there's a particular hotspot growing in a space in Tobago, and we want to call a limited state of emergency in that area to be able to lock it down and to be able to take control. We don't have that latitude. We don't have those powers. So these are broader conversations about what we can and can't do as a THA, but I can tell you that, as I said, the safety and security of our citizens is of paramount importance, and we will prioritize those resources that are necessary to support the efforts of the TTPS, support the efforts of the Defense Force, the Coast Guard, and any other agencies that are tasked with ensuring that our citizens are safe. We will continue to support them while we continue to lobby for central government to do what they are supposed to do.
You speak so well, eh? You explain yourself very clearly. Tell us something. In my perusing what would have transpired in the past, there was at times an exchange between Winston Gypsy Peters and his pronouncement and what he observed happened in Tobago in relation to the Carnival. He was saying that there wasn't enough consultation between your Tobago and Trinidad in terms of guidance, seeing that, and I'm quoting him, inter alia, he is saying that the NCC here would have had all the knowledge and the wisdom and the technical know-how in producing a proper product. This is me quoting Gypsy. And not enough consultation and guidance was taken from our brothers and sisters in Tobago, and vice versa, in relation to ensuring that that product that is on sale in the month of October is a good reflection on the national product. If I were to get somewhere between what all that narrative is putting there, what has been the symbiosis that you all share with the NCC or with the relative body in Trinidad that produces our Carnival here, in terms of reciprocity, in terms of technical knowledge, in terms of know-how, to ensure that the marriage of ideas between Trinidad and Tobago is a concrete one to give you the best thing? Is this just a Tobago product, or is this something that you all would have integrated with your Trinidadian brothers and sisters in the same industry and come up with something?
So I would give way to Dr. Thomas to answer this part, because he was formerly the chair of the Tobago Festivals Commission Limited in the first incarnation of the Tobago October Carnival. So definitely he comes to the table with that background, having helped create that first product. And in addition to that, he has been the person who has been liaising closely in terms of discussions with the NCC. So I'll have him give some context to the questions that you have just asked. Dr. Thomas?
Your volume, Dr. Thomas. I know you're hearing us. You just need to unmute your mic and we're right there. We see you.
Yes, sorry.
Wonderful.
Good.
You're right there. Cool.
Good. You hear me well?
Loud and clear.
Nice. Thanks again. All right. So I can tell you where we are now, and I'll just I'll backtrack. Right.
Yes.
We have always had discussions with NCC from the very first year of the October Carnival. All right. And we've had discussions precisely in relation to what would the nature of collaboration look like. All right. We appreciate that NCC has a peculiar responsibility in relation to executing Carnival on a national level, and we are part of that national system, and therefore from the very onset, part of the planning process, right, and part of the philosophy of the October Carnival has been to have conversations with strategic entities, one of which would be NCC, given its position in relation to the larger Carnival picture, all right? Particularly with the coming of the new CEO, Miss Motley, all right? We have had continuous conversations with her this year since she's begun as CEO, and we have systems in place for collaboration, for shared ideas, and so forth. And I can say that from year one to now, one of the most consistent ways in which we've been collaborating was through the TTCBA, all right, in having the large costumes come across and be part of the masquerade, all right, and the mass. Now, every thing that begins, right, will have its own set of problems, right? A child growing has teething problems and does get sick to build immunity, right? A child being born to a young mother, has to go through the learning process that the mother herself has to go through. So the Tobago Carnival, once I did interviews last year and year before, right? I always like to use that analogy to give context to the October Carnival and to the problems that emerge in the open, whatever they were. One of which was that kind of tension that was there between the planning team and the NCC. Really and truly, none of the narrative is true about Tobago not wanting to reach out to the NCC. So that's not true, because as I said in my preamble, from year one, part of the planning process has been how to best engage some of the entities involved in Carnival planning, one of which is NCC, all right? I suppose part of the challenge has always been, and this is always going to be one of the challenges, once we don't get past the trouble of how we perceive, the two islands and our relationship to that perception, right? For the Tobago planning team, the perception was the planning ought to really emerge from the core of Tobago with help and advice from elsewhere, right? It was never supposed to be received as we are coming to tell you how to plan and how to do things. And part of that, those two perceptions coming from the same place, I'm saying, right? So it's coming from Tobago. So Tobago is feeling, and in terms of its planning, the planning team, Tobago is feeling that we want to plan this thing in the ways in which we know how we plan things on the island, and also with the help that we want to receive. But we also don't want the perception to be, which is one of the perceptions that we felt, right? That NCC or any other entity is coming with a big stick approach to tell Tobago how this should happen and how that should happen in relation to Carnival. Now, there's a thin line between advice and instruction or directive, all right? So I'm not sure the extent to which that was worked out in the first 2 years, and I can tell you that my experience with engaging NCC more directly in year 2 turned out to be quite disappointing, because what was promised really didn't come. So that the conversations did happen, efforts to collaborate were there, but outcomes and expectations were not met, right? Now, part of that struggle between NCC and the Tobago planning team or THO, whichever entity you want to identify as having a particular problem, is a problem that resembles or that replicates or that mimics a larger problem, right? On relations between the two islands, what residents of one island feel, what residents of another island feel. We haven't worked out those things, right? And what is left to fester really are prejudicial perceptions on both islands, left to fester. And as I had said in the earlier part of my intro, I'm not sure how much the media does to help in that regard. But certainly, what the challenges that the Tobago planning team and the Tobago October Carnival has had with NCC are simply challenges that really resemble larger national problems that have not been attended to. Our curriculum, school system doesn't attend to the relational tensions between the two islands, as well as the different groups, different demographies, right? Our political systems don't help to soften the relations or to advance narratives of harmony, right? So naturally, you would have some kind of tension, right, between A and B, if A and B are entities that absorb long-standing prejudices that have not been attended to. I could tell you plenty more, but you know, we want to hear the secretary, and you know, because hard talk, and I suppose this program is mimicking Stephen Sacker's or BBC's hard talk. So I mean, if it's really hard talk, you got to talk the thing real, right? Right. So it's not. And I have always wanted to get, you know, to stretch and thicken the narrative about the October Carnival. It's Tobago October Carnival is a national product. So the Tobago October Carnival is a Trinidad and Tobago Carnival. It's one of the Trinidad and Tobago carnivals, but it happens in Tobago, and it happens in October. So that's really the conversation. So the Tobago destination as a tourism product is a Trinidad and Tobago tourism product.
And it's not like
You see, yeah. So when we're talking about tensions between one entity and the next, really it is a conversation about how we live with each other and what we're not doing.
Yeah.
What we're not doing actually, to harmonize those things.
Yeah.
Ms. Burris, I'm happy that you're here to clear the air. You know, like everything else, when you all started and when Tobago was embarking on this Taste of Carnival initially, years ago, I have to say years ago now, one of the issues was there were voices saying that Carnival stakeholders in Trinidad were eager to jump in and to come on board, but Tobagoans, there was the perception that Tobago wanted this to be a Tobago thing in terms of their flavor and their spin on it. It's a Taste of Carnival, I would imagine Tobago style. So I'm happy Dr. Thomas was able to clear up there that things have evolved, even if that was the narrative the media was carrying some years ago, that at least where we are now, it's a marriage of a national product in terms of a marriage of the expertise and the experiences coming out of, I would imagine, the Trinidad experience and then Tobago, to put together something that would, a package that would work in the month of October. And I guess it's a nice, it being October and we're looking at the National Festival in March, this is a nice introduction, or at least a ceremonious introduction into something, into the national events down the road. My understanding is that the steel bands are involved. I know from my interaction with the Massey Trinidad All-Stars, they had intimated to me that they were in Tobago ever since in the other versions. Have you all invited any other steel band from Trinidad? I know All-Stars are supposed to be there this year. I know you all have Cats and Jammers, your medium band champion, for a number of years running. Tell us something about the steel band's input in this year's event.
So the steel band movement actually has their own branded event, and we've had that event since year one. And that event is called Rhythm, Steel and Powder. And it's something like a pan parade. It really is geared towards persons who are lovers and supporters of steel pan and the steel band movement. So far, what I know is that we should have All Stars on the road. We should have Cuba Joylanders as well. and a number of other medium and small bands from the Tobago space. And what this gives is something like pan and powder that happens in Trinidad. In the first incarnation in 2022, it was pan and powder, but we have evolved our event and we've added rhythm, steel, and powder to the thing. So we're having rhythm sections as well. And this kind of pays homage to the old days of Carnival with live music and live bands and steel band music on the road before big trucks became a staple in Carnival activities. And this activity is happening on the Saturday night of the weekend. So this is Saturday, the 26th of October. And we have merged this activity with our night mass. So we're having rhythm, steel, powder, and night mass basically. So what that would do is it gives an activity for the persons, as I said, who are the lovers and supporters of steel band to be able to have their event and parade in the streets of Scarborough to sweet steel band music. And then we will have our night mass take over the streets a little later on. For us, Tobago is one of those districts under Pantrinbago that has enjoyed a number of success over the last few years. We have won a number of titles. We have a number of young ace rangers coming out of Tobago who have won a number of titles. When you talk about Devon Stewart, that is a Tobagonian. When you talk about Kirsch Ramsey, Tobagonian. When you talk about OJ Richards, Tobagonian. These are young men who have won titles with various bands, and they have represented Tobago all over the world with their talents, and we're very proud of them. And we see pan as one of the pillars of any carnival. You can't have carnival without pan. So when you talk about carnival, we say pan, calypso, and mass. And they have their own branded event and activity that we all enjoy. We had Minister of Tourism, Randall Mitchell, joining us in year one. And I know it's an activity that a lot of persons look forward to as part of the carnival in October.
In relation to the, how do I put this delicately? When we look at some of the editorials surrounding the events that you all are planning in October and the Tobago Carnival, we've had so many people say that the economy of Trinidad and Tobago is in a particular place now where there's no money. Central government is always crying that they don't have any money. And by extension, if central government has a very tight purse or limited funding, and Tobago depends on central government for the disbursement of funds, subventions, support, where does the money come from to support an event such as this? Because I'm reading that it's going to cost somewhere, and let me quote here, so in case the public who's listening, I got this from the newspaper Thursday, the 12th of September 2024, an article by Corey Connelly, and it does indicate that the THA had initially planned to spend 17.5 million, but the final cost was 12 to 13 million. That is in relation to one of the earlier October.
That was in 2022.
Right.
That was the very first year.
What is the budget? The budget, last year's budget, from what I understand, was about $12,590,660. What sort of budget are we looking at this year, and where does the funding come from? Because, you know, I want to erase that the negative comments that people make and saying, oh, let's spending money on...
Well, you can't erase negative comments, Mr. Ali, because the reality is that people will say things because they choose to say things. You know, it's kind of funny that there's a lot of emphasis on how Tobago spends the money that we are allocated, and people trying to ask themselves, Tobago should prioritize X, Y, Z, A, B, C. And definitely, I think that if we have to start anywhere, we have to look at what central government spends. So if we look at what NCC gets for Carnival alone, and let me qualify some of the things that Dr. Thomas said. NCC exists to manage Carnival in Trinidad and Tobago. But under the Tobago House of Assembly Act, we have responsibility for culture. We have an entity called the Tobago Festivals Commission Limited that manages our carnival or carnival products. But that is not all that they do. They have other events and festivals that they manage, like the Tobago Heritage Festival, the Blue Food Festival, and Jazz Festival, and all of these things that used to happen. And NCC receives a budget of $141 million this year to manage carnival activities for National Carnival, but we don't get 1 cent of that money. So we have to take Festivals Commission allocation, and I want people to understand what an allocation is. They got $20 million in this year's budget as their allocation, Tobago Festivals Commission. And with that 20 million, we are supposed to pay recurrent expenditure, which is money to run the company. So that is bills, utilities, staff, etc., etc. Put that aside. And we also have to take part of that money and have all of these events. So we have to have money for Tobago October Carnival, get money for whatever we do for National Carnival in February, do a heritage festival, do a jazz if we choose to, have a blue food festival, and any other festivals or activities we decide to support during the year. So that allocation to Tobago is not for one specific event. It is for the management of the Festivals Commission and a series of events. So let me answer the question where we get the money from. From the time the mandate was given to me to create and produce and to implement this Tobago October Carnival, in my mind, the business model could not be that the THA was coming in 100% every single year to have this activity. So we set out essentially to look towards, within 5 years, making the event self-sustaining. And when we say self-sustaining, getting to a point where the inputs of government is equal to the inputs of the private sector and other partners. By year 3, I can tell you that our initial investment in the Carnival in year 1 was $13.5 million. And that was less than what we anticipated or estimated at 17 million. And that is what you just read. In year 2, our estimated budget was in the region of 14 million. In actuality, we spent just over 12.5 million. So again, we spent less than what we estimated. This year, we are wrapping up a final round of sponsorship conversations, because when you put your investment out front and you grow something, then people who may be apprehensive in the beginning of getting on board, when they see that you come with a good product and then you're trying to solidify the product in the marketplace, then they get a lot more confidence that this is something that they should be investing in. And I can tell you, coming out of Carnival last year in particular, and you can check back your records through the media, that the Chamber of Commerce came out and said that the Carnival activity in Tobago caused a 500% increase in their revenues over that period. So the Carnival was created primarily to be a tourism economic driver during a time that we normally have a downturn in our number of arrivals, because we're just coming off our peak domestic season and it's right before the beginning of our winter season, because Tobago has 2 distinct tourism arrival periods. We have a distinct winter season, which is essentially from November to April. During that time, we get the bulk of our airlift. We have direct flights from the UK and Germany, as well as the bulk of our cruise ship passengers. And just about April to September is our bulk domestic season, our peak domestic season. So that's when you have all the long weekends, the Easter weekend, you have the island crashers, you have Great Race and all of these activities, July, August. So that is where we get the bulk of our domestic passengers. And the Tobago October Carnival is resident at the end of October, where we would naturally, over the years, have a dip in the amount of people coming to the destination from Trinidad, and where we have not yet started getting in the bulk of our international passengers for winter season. So it was a mechanism for us to stimulate the Tobago economy. And in order to do that, we have to make certain investments. So definitely year 1, we took a gamble to have this thing called a Tobago October Carnival, in the hope that it would redound to thousands of visitors coming to the island to spend money, to stay in hotels, to go by restaurants, to go by bars, to rent cars, to put money in the pockets of our local businesses, our local entrepreneurs. And as the festival grows, for us, the inputs of the THA will get less and less, because more of our private sector entities see the importance of having the Tobago Carnival in space. More of the sponsors who will naturally support a Trinidad Carnival in February now have an opportunity to support a Tobago Carnival in October. So for us, it always has been about, we're going to put out the money first year, second year, it's going to decrease. Naturally, we're in the 3rd year now, so the budget is going to be less than that 14 million that we had estimated last year. We're trying to see if we could look at a budget in the region of about 10 million, but don't quote me on that. We're still crunching the figures. But I said it publicly when a few months ago, stating that we're going to have more private sector involvement, because we see the people of Tobago and the private sector owning this activity at some point. And if you look at the Jamaica Carnival, for example, they don't have a lot of input from government because it was private sector interests coming together to have this carnival activity. And now Jamaica Carnival is actually one of the largest carnivals in the Caribbean. And we knew that in order for people to see the value and the benefits of a Tobago October Carnival, we had to go out in front with the product. So definitely for us, it was about what do we create that is not a copycat of other carnivals in its makeup? How do we ensure that we sell the destination along with all of the other things that a carnival offers? How do we put our special Tobago spin and flavor on people coming to the destination and enjoying carnival type activities? And definitely, how do we ensure that we have a place on the regional international carnival calendar where we create something that people feel they have to visit? And I think that we have hit all of those boxes. We've checked all of those boxes. So in terms of getting people to understand where money is spent, our allocations are under different divisions, the equivalent of ministries in Trinidad. And the budget that goes towards tourism, culture, antiquities and transportation is specifically for activities surrounding those things. So I cannot take tourism money. It's not supposed to be used to pave roads. Or we can't take the money and go and pay for support for the TTPS. Every single division has an allocation, whether it be health, whether it be education, whether it be other things. But it doesn't mean that there is not room for us to discuss reprioritization if it is that something important comes up. And I will give you a very, very real example of what almost happened this year. Tobago was on course to be hit by Beryl. And on the weekend that Beryl passed was around the time that St. Vincent was supposed to have their carnival. And let's just say, God forbid, Beryl did hit Tobago, we would not be having a conversation about a carnival right now, because any money we would have naturally put towards that activity would then be going towards rebuilding efforts and those kinds of things, because we are now dealing with the aftermath of a natural disaster. So there is nothing written in stone with respect to monies and where monies can go and where monies can be spent. So for us, the investments that we are making in tourism and culture, and especially events tourism on the island, is to redound to the wider growth of the Tobago economy. And the reality is one of the things that we enjoy very much, unlike the rest of our Caribbean counterparts, is that we have a very robust domestic market to service, and that comes from Trinidad. And the onus is on us in Tobago to continue to have activities that will encourage Trinidadians to come and vacation and spend money in Tobago. And a carnival is just but one of those activities.
For what you've described, much of the activities is really centered in that area of Scarborough and
Scarborough.
that, you know, if I almost up and down the Claude Noel Highway. Let's talk about how do you all include so they wouldn't feel isolated. Is the carnival centered strictly in that area, meaning Crown Point to Scarborough, or do you all incorporate, or how do you all incorporate Moriah, Mason Hall, Speyside, Charlottesville, in terms of, I'm not saying having anything up there, no, I'm not, that's not it. For them to feel a part of, because a lot of the benefits and the economic drive that is generated from the carnival will redound to those people that own villas in the Crown Point and Scarborough area. There are persons who are outside of that area in terms of Tobagonians in Moriah, Mason Hall, Charlottesville. The carnival wouldn't redound in the benefits of it, may not redound economically in that context. Have you all found, in addition to the carnival, any sort of smaller festival? I'm not talking about the carnival itself, but something to have a perhaps a 3-hour activity in those areas that will encourage tourists to at least spend a few hours up there in that time frame.
So, Mr. Ali, you're essentially talking about the Tobago Heritage Festival that we have in July. And that is a community-based activity that takes persons across the length and breadth of the island, enjoying our culture, history, and heritage in various forms. So, for example, I'm pretty certain you've heard about the Moriah Old Time Wedding, which is a staple on the heritage calendar. And thousands of people take that yearly trek up to Moriah and they enjoy that activities and all the activity. Some people go up from the night before. Charlottesville is a perfect example. Natural Treasures Day, you have activities throughout the weekend into the day of Natural Treasures Day and even the day after. So our Tobago Heritage Festival is designed to be our flagship community tourism festival. So what that setup is that a number of communities, they have the opportunity to send in proposals for their specific activities to get support from the Tobago Festivals Commission, that company that is trying to do everything, not just a carnival alone. And based on the proposal that they send, they will be approved for support, and then they will get to have and host an activity. And it's a rotating type setup. So any community can submit a proposal at any point in time in the year for consideration for the Tobago Heritage Festival. And what this does is allow the opportunity for our visitors to see places that they would not normally see if they come to Tobago on vacation. So if you're staying in the southwest of the island, you may not get to Charlottesville, you may not get to Mason Hall, you may not get to Mariam, you may not go to Lekoto, you may not go to Blackrock. But the Tobago Heritage Festival gives the opportunity for the person to really traverse the entire of Tobago and to support communities in their initiatives. And what we're trying to do is to evolve the business model of the Tobago Heritage Festival to make it something of a year-round fixture, because there's a lot of education that has to take place about the Heritage Festival. There's a lot of education that has to take place about the communities that are involved in the Heritage Festival. We also have to look at the component of educational tourism, where we have cultural studies and research students who come to Tobago specifically to reside themselves in the communities, to learn about Tobago history and culture, to learn about tambourine music, to learn about folktales and superstitions, to learn about our unique Tobago language. Doc, I think you could jump in here, because I think this is one of your very strong suits in talking about the Heritage Festival. It's really one of those community tourism products that is steeped heavily in history and culture, that also gives an opportunity for people to have fun and enjoy themselves while they are learning. So Doc, I want to hand over to you to talk about the impacts of the Heritage Festival and what it means for driving our community tourism products in Tobago.
Right. Thanks again. And let me just quickly say, I have to make this very quick, because I had indicated to Secretary, but I neglected to mention to you, Farid, that I have a meeting to chair at 5:30. So I can only be here up until then, right?
They're stuck with me.
Yes. So the Heritage Festival has been around for quite a while. I think we're in the 37th year, is it? And between the time in which I functioned as the chairperson of the TFC, the Tobago Festivals Commission, and now, much discussion has been taking place around how to thicken and retool the Tobago Heritage Festival as a Tobago product. Now, if you've been to any of the Tobago Heritage Festivals, one of the things that we emphasize very heavily is our African heritage. All right. And as Secretary was saying, you move around to the different villages and get different depictions of different imaginations of our African heritage. I'm saying imaginations because much of it comes out of memory, much of it therefore comes out of our imaginations, and of course handed down rituals and so forth. But it's also something to bear in mind that it's called the Tobago Heritage Festival, which has emphasized our African heritage. One of the things about Tobago, if you know anything about Tobago's history, again, I say not something that is well known, because we don't have the systems in place for our full country, full nation to properly know Tobago, right? But Tobago has a very, very thick, mixed up history. I mean, I'm getting away now from the 33 times that the colonial people wanted us. That's the cliche part of it, right? But Susan Craig James, I always talk about that book because it's the only book that provides that very 100-year comprehensive history of Tobago. And it will tell you of the different groups that came to Tobago by way of Caribbean islands, right? So many Tobagonians have, as part of their ancestry, a Grenadian, as in a Barbadian, or even a Vincentian, all right? Because we were also tied to those islands, even before we were tied to Trinidad, in a union. All right, and that explains one of the reasons why Tobago made a move in the very early days of the Tobago Carnival, the first year, to make links with Grenada, because there is this very cultural inbuilt appetite, right, to know ourselves beyond Trinidad, beyond that which we know, because we know Trinidad now. We have been linked with Trinidad for over close to what, 100 years? Is it
135?
135 years.
go, right? So we've had that. I mean, if you ask any Tobagonian, right, their experience of living in Trinidad is real, particularly those who have to or who go to develop themselves post-secondary school. Going to Trinidad and living is part of a Tobagonian's experience, right? So we have that intimacy with Trinidad, particularly because of that. The typical Trinidadian does not have to come to Tobago outside of if he or she has a business or so there. But we also have that very cultural hunger, right, for Grenada, for Barbados, right? My both parents, their great grandparents have folks coming from Barbados and Grenada. I'm sure Secretary Boris will tell you something similar. You talk, right? So part of what we know or have been having discussions about over the last 2 years in regards to the Tobago Heritage Festival is how to really thicken the heritage of Tobago beyond its African emphasis, because we've done that quite well. I mean, we're known for that. You know that Tobago in Best Village, the folk thing, we just win that right through, because that is we, right? But there are other aspects of Tobago. So let me go back to Susan Craig James, right? I know that she's working now on a book on the Indian presence in Tobago, right? Part of the history there is that a lot the Indians in Tobago don't necessarily have not carried quote unquote traditional Indian names, all right? So there is that history to be told, and therefore that heritage to find its way in the Tobago Heritage Festival. There is a Chinese presence in Tobago, right? And that too has had its own evolution on the island, cultural evolution and story, but it hasn't yet necessarily found its place in the Tobago Heritage Festival. The other thing is that, as you know, a lot of folks distinguished Trinidad and Tobago by way of language, right? And I don't know that we have necessarily tapped into the richness of our language as a tourism product in the way in which Jamaica has done theirs, all right? So part of the discussion about retooling and reshaping the Tobago Heritage Festival also has to do with how to pay a little bit more attention to how we speak, right? As a way to distinguish, as well as to market and promote ourselves as peculiar Caribbean people, all right? So our peculiarity also is exhibited by way of how we speak, and more attention to that is also one of the things that is going to be brought into, co-opted into the whole conversation about the Tobago Heritage Festival. Because part of what I know for sure our division does not really want to do is to tie Tobago to a cliche, where all you get from Tobago is what you expect to get from Tobago, which is why, if I may say, the Tobago Performing Arts Company is charged with a peculiar responsibility as well to do a certain kind of art, right? If you think about what you've seen in Tobago on stage, we're very heavily involved in nostalgic art of memory, and I mean art in the true sense, right? So we perform our history, we perform our memories. TPAC in particular, though, has a responsibility to bring a different kind of art, more conceptual art on stage. All of this, too, is what is impacting how we rethink the Tobago Heritage Festival as a tourism product.
Well, I thank you for your explanation. I know I don't want to squeeze you any longer. You'll be late for your meeting. But thank you for sharing your time with us, and we look forward to a continued relationship. And the next time I'll be on time in introducing you.
No. That's the old school teacher in me, brother. All right? All good. Bless up. All right?
So much.
Safe. All right. Bye-bye.
Ms. Burris, tell us something. In the national space right now, so much is being said about re-examining some of the names that are on our streets, some of the people that we celebrate. Tobago's history is rich in steeped in its tradition of having been at times under the control of so many different European powers. So the European influence in terms of the French and the Spanish and the English and the Dutch, it's more present in Tobago than it is in Trinidad. You all represent, through the naming of your forts, Campbellton, so many of the others there. What is your view, and is there a drive within Tobago to revisit some of the names and the heritage sites and to reconsider whether certain names should be where it is and replaced with other names?
So even before that conversation started on the national level, we have been going ahead and just doing the thing. I could tell you that we have a number of renaming ceremonies in train right now. In fact, for this October Carnival, we plan to do some major renaming of some major streets in Scarborough against renaming them to our cultural icons. So Calypso Rose, the Mighty Shadow, Lord Nelson, they are going to get some streets in Scarborough named after them. So for us, we feel as if there's an opportunity definitely for us to bring some balance to the conversation. There's a value in remembering where we came from. There's a value in remembering our history. And that is why in this particular incarnation of the THA, the Chief Secretary made it a point to create this idea of an antiquities unit and department, so that the conversation about our history is not just surrounding renaming a street or pulling down a statue, but examining what do we value as a people. And I can tell you that if we try to have a conversation about renaming Fort King George, the consensus might be to leave it. I have not heard in the space anybody making a stink about having Fort King George renamed. So that there's a lot of pride that Tobagonians take in our historical attractions. And definitely for us, we recognize the value in having our historical attractions and what that means to our tourism product. But at the same time, there are opportunities for us to own our Tobago space. So I would tell you a little story that the Chief Secretary always tells when this conversation comes up. There's a street in Scarborough called Wilson Road. Ask anybody why Wilson Road is named Wilson Road. The average person can't tell you. But he claims that Wilson Road is named Wilson Road because the man who settled there, the first person who lived there, apparently his name was Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson might have been a goat herder, a sheep herder, a garbage man, a grave digger, whatever. And every time somebody had to go in that space and they had to tell somebody, well, I'm going by Mr. Wilson, the road by Mr. Wilson. And eventually it just became named Wilson Road. Wilson Road was no special character in the space. So in cases like that, where the history cannot be traced, we have instances where there's more than one top hill, for example, in Tobago. So that in cases like that, where you want to be able to differentiate a space, or you want to be able to celebrate some very important figure who grew up in that area, we definitely have not waited to take the opportunity to go forth and rename spaces. So we've renamed roads in honor of Lord Nelson in Plymouth. I think we renamed a road in Golden Lane after the late Mr. Hochoy Charles. We just opened our new roundabout at Sherburne, and a number of our very important figures are featured there. Miss Pamela Nicholson, Dr. Winston Murray, Mr. James Bigart, and we have plans to include other notable figures in the Tobago's history space to rename major arteries connecting Scarborough and other areas after these persons. So once we have the opportunity to do so, we have not waited to do that. And for us, as I said, it's about balance, because it's not about renaming every street or pulling down everything that has reminded us of our colonial past, but it's about embracing the value of what history brings to the table, and at the same time, leaving room for us to imprint our own legacy on the island as we are here.
Yeah, so Tobago produced a number of intellectuals through the years.
Yes.
You all mentioned Dr. Susan Craig before.
Yes.
I remember I have quite a number of her books, so I'm happy to hear that she's writing another one.
Yes.
so much of our history and so much of us in the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago, we don't celebrate our persons and our heroes by writing their biographies. And very often, when I ask about it, it's often said that who's going to buy it? The market for the purchasing of books and people wanting to know the story behind these certain individuals. Um, Sometimes you don't make back the money that you put out. But what have you all been doing to, and I'm saying you all meaning you are the face of the THA today. What have the THA been doing in terms of commemorating the memories of people like APT James, um, and other senior politicians, political figures? Naturally, President Robinson would pass into that category. In terms of, I know that Robinson has a biography. James doesn't have one. Some negative coverage, if I might use it that way, came across it with APT James, where they said even his gravestone was overgrown with bush and wasn't properly kept. Some repairs were done to that thereafter that sort of publicity. Have you all been doing things to honor the memory, not just in terms of names, but at least having events, or maybe it's a suggestion, if it's not happening, that you have an evening or a day with recalling the contribution of these individuals, perhaps at the library there in Scarborough, and people can come in and a display where you can trace things that they became associated with. Is that already in the space, or is it that it's something, an idea that you all are gelling with, just to recall, to play on and remember those persons that would have had value in the space in Tobago through the years?
So that would form some of the work of the Department of Antiquities that Dr. Thomas is working to build out at this time. There's a whole plan for a public education campaign that not just talks about antiquities from a physical, tangible heritage perspective, but we are talking about persons and personalities as well. I could tell you that in Tobago, we have a number of spaces named after prominent persons. So you spoke about A.N.R. Robinson, the airport is named after him. Lennox Denoon, former chairman of the THA, we have a Lennox Denoon Park just next door to our Assembly Legislature that we refurbished completely during this fiscal year. It was left to fall into a state of disrepair, and I must take the opportunity to commend the work of the team at URP under the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development, as well as the IDCOT, who spearheaded that work in terms of beautifying that park again and paying good memory to Lennox Denoon and the work that he has done in the Tobago space. And as I indicated, there's a number of renaming ceremonies that are in train. They have actually been planned now for roundabouts to be renamed after important political figures or important historical figures in the Tobago space. So when that is done, certainly there will be media coverage of that. We are constantly always looking at ways to see how we can honor those who have gone before us. The administrative complex, which is the office of the chief secretary, has been renamed after Ho Choi Charles. So it's now the Ho Choi Charles Administrative Complex. So we are not waiting to say thanks. We are not waiting to show our appreciation. We are not waiting to give the kind of coverage that is necessary for people to understand how important the important role that these persons have played in the development of Tobago. I could tell you the Heritage Festival has a component that we want to build out that will interrogate the academics. So that will be the place where the stories are being told, where the research is being brought, where we can have a conference or something like that that allows persons to come and share that information, to share books and letters and papers and poems and songs, because we recognize how valuable it is for us to document and preserve. And it's no longer just about hoping that people stay alive long enough to teach others and they learn the right thing. But in the age of technology, we are in a space where we can now document those stories, so that we have filmed interviews with people like Mr. Stanley Beard, who was one of the originators of the Tobago Heritage Festival. We filmed interviews with Mr. Binley Benjamin, another seminal figure in that. So we are taking the opportunity to really create a treasure trove of information so that our library will now become more robust. I'm not sure if we are a book reading population anymore because everything is at your fingertips. Everybody has a walk-in library in their hand. So how do we integrate some of these things and utilize platforms that will help people become engaged? So we have ePixel Studios in Tobago under EACOT, who is now looking into animation. And we have already started animating stories. So they've animated parts of our Heritage Festival story, goat racing. They did a cartoon for our junior secretary of tourism who recently competed in the regional competition that showed our marine environment and 3 things that she would do to improve our marine environment and how we sell it as a sustainable tourism product. So we are utilizing the technology to be able to create products that could now tell those stories. So it's not just about waiting for people to read books, but it's about how do we take the stories from the books and how do we make them come alive. And there's a lot of exciting things that are taking place under this administration. We've embraced youth wholeheartedly. This administration is very young. The chief secretary is just only 39 years old. I just turned 39 on Sunday. I'm the youngest secretary as part of the executive council, and most of our members, the majority of the members, are under 45. So when you talk about youth in governance, this Tobago House of Assembly is a demonstration of youth in governance. And we marry the fact that we were able to leave Tobago and to go and get access to tertiary education wherever we went. And we have come back, and now we are utilizing all of what we have learned, and we're bringing all of our experience to the fore and balancing all of that youth and that energy that comes with youth with all of the wisdom of our elders who only want to see Tobago progress. And for me, that's the most important thing, ensuring that we create a Tobago that is a Tobago that we all can be proud of. And despite the challenges, we continue to press on, we continue to work hard, we continue to focus on the task ahead. And for me, there are exciting times, very exciting times ahead. And I can't wait to be part of the rollout of some of these initiatives. There's focus on creating a Tobago-centric curriculum right now. The Secretary of the Division of Education is spearheading that, and that's very critical and important for us to ensure that we can teach our Tobago children in our Tobago schools their Tobago history. Because again, based on the curriculum set by a central government, there is very little mention made of Tobago history in the books that we have to buy to send our children to school. And I will give you a very kind of heartbreaking example. We had a teacher in a school who came from Trinidad, and she was giving a child a social studies test. And one of the questions on that social studies test is, what is a festival in Tobago that visitors can come to? And the child put the Tobago Heritage Festival, and she gave him wrong. And that is incorrect. The Tobago Heritage is a festival that attracts tourists from both Trinidad and the region and the rest of the world. And it speaks about the heritage and culture of Tobago and all of the things that we have to offer. And it just goes to show that there is a lack of appreciation and understanding of Tobago history and culture. And it can't just be looked at from the lens of a Tobago October Carnival whenever that conversation comes up, or a Tobago Heritage Festival when that conversation comes up. For me, we've been together for 135 years. What do we really know about each other? And when you look at the education system, it is heavily skewed towards teaching our kids about a Trinidad context. But we are not given the same kind of platform, the same kind of energy, the same kind of latitude for children in Trinidad to learn about Tobago history. More than just we changed hands 32 or 33 times, depending on who's telling the story. So we recognize the importance of educating our children. And that is why we are placing a lot of emphasis on the development of this Tobago-centric curriculum and what it means for us to be able to create global citizens coming out of Tobago and preparing them for a world where they need to have the kind of skills to survive the changes, because change comes literally overnight. The world that my parents raised me for no longer exists. The world that I'm raising my kids for may not exist by the time that they are old. So we have to be able to be constantly looking ahead. And I can say that one of the advantages of being young is definitely being open to change and being willing to evolve and being willing to have hard conversations about change, being willing to confront biases, being willing to say, well, okay, I this is how I feel about this particular situation, and somebody else could say, well, I feel differently, and we could agree to disagree, or we could agree to have different opinions on the matter, and that we don't treat each other badly because we have different opinions on the matter. And we have to elevate the discourse when it comes to politics. We have to elevate the discourse when it comes to the relationship between the Tobago House of Assembly and central government, because we have to ask ourselves, what do we want for each other? Trinidad must want the best for Tobago. Tobago must want the best for Trinidad. And as long as we want to stay in this relationship, we need to take the opportunity to learn more about each other so that we can always want what is best for each other.
Can I interject here? Good afternoon.
Oh.
This is David McIntyre. I'm the quiet one in the studio here. There are lots of comments here that I would like to go through quickly. But before I do that, at one time I spent a lot of time in Tobago. Tobago is a place that I love very much. And at the very first time I came there, I was wondering, why doesn't central government put more emphasis on developing Tobago? So that's it. I mean, I don't want to go down that road. That's our next program by itself. But tell me something. With all the activities and events that you spoke about, the village harvests, are those part of the activities to attract tourists?
Listen, no, I think harvest is one of Tobago's best kept secrets. To be honest with you,
it should not be.
It is, well, I mean, we might run out of food if people really understand what this harvest thing is. So for your listeners who don't know what harvest is, there's a harvest calendar. So we've put together a calendar of harvests in every village. So every village in Tobago celebrates harvest at some different point in the year, and there are some parts of the year that are standard for that particular village. So for example, if you want to go Speyside harvest, it's the last Sunday in July. If you don't remember no other harvest, the chief secretary is from Speyside. His harvest is the last Sunday in July. Easter Sunday is Bethel harvest. Mother's Day is Wim harvest. Father's Day is Lambo harvest. So there are some days in the year that harvest for that particular community takes place. And what harvest is that traditionally, we were an agricultural based economy years ago, and the harvest allowed the opportunity for the farmers in every village to take one Sunday for the year to reap the best of their crop and go to church and have it blessed. And then they would either give away that produce to members in the community, or they would sell it for a very, 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 very small price. And after that blessing, every household in the community will now cook a ton of food and invite their neighbors and persons from surrounding villages to come and to celebrate the harvest and to eat, drink, and be merry. And that has continued for however long it's been going on. So there's a particular point in time during the year where every weekend there's a harvest going on in some community in Tobago. And the beautiful thing about harvest is, despite the challenge with crime, we have not stopped doing harvest the way that we've done harvest. So you can come to that community as a stranger and you can walk into anybody's yard. Once you have manners, you have to say good afternoon and they will feed you. And you will eat some of the best food that you've eaten in your entire life. And Tobago has some excellent cooks, both male and female, but I'm partial to my dad's cooking. And especially if you go to Palatavia, where my family is from, the men are the ones who cook. But you will eat some of the best food that you've had in your life. And you can go from house to house, like similar to Parangin around Christmas time in Trinidad. You go from house to house and you could eat, drink, and be merry, and then you could come back the next day for crop over, and they cook a next pot of soup, or they cook a next set of food, and that is that harvest experience. And right now there is a social media influencer called Harvest Gods, who is actually turning people on to this harvest thing, and he has a collaboration with Foodie Nation where they've gone to different harvest festivals and they have showcased the history of harvest, and they've gone to particular houses that are known to keep up big harvests, and they have been tuning in their followers to the beauty of what harvest gives in the Tobago space. But it's still very much a secret. It's not out there in mainstream, but definitely it's one of those community tourism type activities that we are quietly pushing, so that especially when we have visitors who have never experienced harvest before, and these are those visitors from places like the UK and Germany and from the Netherlands, Scandinavian regions and whatnot, when we take them to harvest, they are blown away by the hospitality. They're blown away by the food. They're blown away by the taste. So it's something that over the next couple of months we're going to be developing, and we're going to be putting out some more marketing about it. But definitely we don't want it to get too big where it's unmanageable. You know, you
Yes.
don't want to cook food for 100 people and then 1,000 people show up.
Yeah.
But if there are persons who come to Tobago and they've never experienced a harvest, try to go to harvest at least once in your lifetime. You
Yes.
definitely will not regret it.
Because my first experience, I came up there as a DJ. I came up the first time to play cricket for my school, and then
Okay.
I came on a very regular basis as a DJ. And trust me, when I went to the first harvest, you know, some of the guys who I would call my roadies who came with me, you know, the hospitality was at such a high level that they
Yeah.
started eating like crazy. So by the time we got to the second house, they couldn't eat
You're very
anymore.
full. That's you have to eat a little by each house. That's what
Yeah.
and show
Yeah.
your tote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Let me just pick up on the from bottom up in the comments page here. Roxanne Jones, maybe there can be some curated harvest experiences. And she says some things are worth protecting and not over commercializing, as what you're saying.
Yeah.
And uh, Bernadette Z is saying there's nothing in those Trinidad books about Tobago. And I quite agree. I am endorsing all what you are saying about Tobago. And I have a problem with central government not understanding that relationship that we should develop where the both islands are concerned, because Tobago's culture, at the very first time, I was like shocked. I wanted to know, am I in Tobago? You know, in Trinidad and Tobago. That's when I came to play cricket for my school. I was a teenager, and I was saying, how come they talk differently to us? You know, I was really curious, and I am a curious kind of guy who would like to learn a lot of things. So when I came there, I came to play cricket, and I played one game because I was like busy trying to absorb the beauty, the marine life, you know, the way people did the agricultural work and things. So I can tell a big story about my experiences in Tobago, but the harvest, I thought you were leaving it out. So before the program came to an end, I thought I should ask you about that.
Thank you so much for
I think it's a
interjecting with
very,
that.
very, very nice experience.
It is. It is.
Yes. Yes.
For us, you know, hospitality is at the core of every Tobagonian, and I want to put a plug. You know, they talk about customer service and you know customer service in general, and the challenges that we have it with customer service in the tourism sector. And what I like to kind of do in my conversations with people is say, put on your harvest face now. See if
Yeah.
we can replicate that harvest hospitality every single day of the year. And it's not the easiest, because from a very high level place where I sit, I understand that the tourism industry is not set up in the best way. It doesn't present the opportunities to bring out the best in people. It's still considered a very minimum wage, menial type job. So there's not a lot of pride that people elicit when they talk about working in the tourism sector, especially with hotels and you know other you know establishments. And you know when people talk about, okay, well, why can't we have things like Jamaica and Grenada and all of these people? Is because their tourism sectors are set up to attract talent, to attract passionate people, to pay them well, to give them opportunities for upward advancement, to always have opportunities where they can move on from where they're at and go to a different place and be at a higher level. And our tourism product has been generally stagnant for a number of years. And
Yes.
there are a lot of external factors that have led to that, the land license being one of them, and our inability to attract foreign direct investment. So it's unfair to compare Tobago to a Grenada or a Barbados or a Jamaica or a St. Lucia, where in these territories somebody can come in and they can purchase land and they could put up a hotel development and they will get support from the government. They will get tax incentives. They will get all manner of sweeteners to ensure that they bring the investment to that jurisdiction and even the ease of doing business. When you talk about having to apply to purchase land in Tobago and it taking upwards of 9 years to get an application approved, that's time for people to leave and take their investment elsewhere. But in other jurisdictions, an application to do business takes 4 business days. And if we're really serious about diversification of the economy nationally, and we're talking about tourism, then we can't just talk the talk. We have to walk the walk. And the reality is that there's been so much focus on oil and gas and energy and alternative energies and manufacturing and downstream industries. And Tobago is, and not Tobago, but tourism in general, and Tobago by extension, is treated as an afterthought. And if we really do make the kinds of investments that we can make into building the tourism product in Tobago, Tobago can be a net earner of foreign exchange for the country. So that when we have a conversation about Tobago's contribution, and when people talk about, oh, well, we get this $2.3 billion and that's too much money, and we hear all of the comments that come in the Trinidad space, but it's not like if Tobago wants to continue to exist in that arrangement. We want to get to the place where we could contribute in this partnership if we choose to stay in this partnership. And we must be able to build ourselves to be able to help one another. So if it is that Trinidad is earning foreign exchange through oil and gas and energy and methanol and ammonia and all of these things, that Tobago is poised to earn foreign exchange through tourism, whether it be domestic tourism, whether it be international arrivals by air, whether it be cruise ship, whatever it is. We want to be able to help this union.
Yes.
And there is need for a very, very serious conversation. The time has come. We have been joined together since 1889. That is a very long time.
I can endorse those sentiments about tourism because I am the president of the Lubber Pitch Lake Tour Guides Association, and I tell you, it's an uphill, a Mount Everest kind of climb to get the people who are in authority to set up that sort of tourism revenue earning aspect. It's really like hell, trust me. But it's nice having you on. I hope that we can have you on at some other time. I'm going to ask for your number.
Okay, no problem. Mr. Ali, you brought me on hard talk, and I feel like if you ain't get to the hard part of the talk, but that's okay.
Yes, we have to arrange for you to come.
Don't be afraid to drill me, because I'm one of those people that I'm willing to interrogate anything that you bring to the table, and definitely, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to ventilate some of the challenges and to share some of the good news, but to also ventilate some of the challenges. I think it's very important, as I said, for us to really ask ourselves, what do we want out of this relationship? Trinidad, what does Trinidad want for itself? Tobago, what does Tobago want for itself? And before the show wraps up, and because I know you guys were talking about government before, and I had to log off briefly to come back on, there's a general election coming up. And everybody knows that in the last election, the government came down to the 2 Tobago seats, essentially. And for me, the way the thing is going, if it continues to come down to Tobago deciding who goes into government, that cannot be a very fair arrangement, because you're going to have persons in Trinidad who feel we should be able to decide, because we are the majority, we have 39 seats. Yes? How does it make sense that 2 seats decide who gets the whole hog? In addition to that, those 2 seats are only important around an election time. And when the hog is decided and divided up, Tobago is no longer in the conversation for 5 years. And there has to be a conversation about the constitutional arrangement between Tobago and Trinidad. And I know that the Prime Minister is on record as saying that they are going to take the Tobago Island Government Bill to the Parliament. And I look forward to what that action will bring in terms of the debate and everything. But we stand resolute on this side because we gave our comments, we gave our suggestions, we made our recommendations, we participated fully in the process to inform what this piece of historic legislation should look like. And if it is that those conversations and those recommendations continue to be sidelined because of the power of 39 versus 2, then you're going to continue to foist upon the people of Tobago a situation where we always feel like if we are second-class citizens in the union. So for the persons who sit in central government, who I think love Tobago, because I think there are some of them there who love Tobago, I think that now is the time to not just play politics when we talk about the relationship between Tobago and Trinidad, but it's to bring the parties, and not the political parties, but the THA, the central government, to the table. Let's decide as a nation where we want to go. Let's decide what we want for each other. Let's decide what we want out of the union. And let us see if, despite our political differences, we can go forward together for the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago. And that's where I'll leave it for tonight.
Thanks so much for your presence. I have to thank Dr. Faith Israel for introducing us, and hopefully we could have you again. And
Sure.
you got a taste of Hard Talk. We'll evolve the conversation in time.
No problem.
So much.
Let's not hope for it. Let's set up a next date with this honorable personality here.
We will soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Enjoy
so
your evening.
much.
Be safe.
Good night to your viewers. Good night, Trinidad and Tobago. Take care. And I look forward to the next time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Burris.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Blessing, David. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Take care.
I will. Thank you so very much. Yes. Okay, that's it for today's edition of Hard Talk with Farid Ali, the host. We had some really special guests on today. And of course, Farid will be back next Wednesday for another edition of Hard Talk right here at Power 102 Digital.